I think we're on. So good morning, everybody. I apologize. Our internet at home went down this morning just before I was going to get started. So I'm struggling to figure out how to log on. So I'm on. It's great to have you with us. As you're all starting to gather this morning, and as always, Sunday morning is just a great time just to reconnect with one another and to spend a few moments together, kind of centering and grounding ourselves so that we can journey more fully into the invitation to life that is a gift to all of us. So I'm glad you're here. I was sort of chuckling this week. I've been watching, as you are, my news every night. Judy Woodruff, she's, of course, guiding the news report from, I think, her library or something. And Seth Meyers is in his attic, and I think, why aren't they in their living rooms? Why don't people gather with us in their living rooms? And so it's so nice to have you here in this living space with me. Today, I'm going to finish that we started on the hero's journey. And the reason I selected the hero's journey is because I think our situation that we're in, this shared global pandemic, is in some ways opening a window for all of us to experience the possibility of taking a dual journey. And last week I talked a little bit about how we begin that journey by finding a place of centering for ourselves, that sort of embrace that holds us. What are those places or those experiences that allow us a sense of rejuvenation, of kind of inner calm, that give us the capacity to engage the world in a new way? So last week I wanted to spend kind of a moment thinking about how we sort of ground ourselves. But this week, as we kind of close up this idea of the hero's journey, I want to think about what launches us into the journey itself. So that's the kind of rhythm I want to explore today with you, is kind of that breathing rhythm that we have biologically, right? This capacity to both breathe in and breathe out. How do we construct a life of meaning that has capacity for both that inner breath and then that outer expression? That inner breath and that outer expression. In many ways, that pattern is the pattern that we use to engage life itself. I was thinking, when my grandkids, I would watch them get a little bit out of hand, right? And one of my grandkids would be swirling out of control. And my daughter had this technique where she'd say, hey, just pause and breathe for a minute. And she would guide her child into a breathing exercise. And that breathing exercise, finding again some center and calm, allowed the child to re-engage the situation again. That pattern of back and forth is sort of what I wanted to help you kind of understand or think about as you imagine where this hero's journey might lead you. So I'm glad you're here today. And now that we're live and all here, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the display I've set up here, and how it will be kind of our way to orient today. I brought together a meditation cushion that you can see here, and a candle in the center of that cushion that I'm going to light today as a reminder that each of us, however we understand our soul or our inner journey or our sense of spirit or the vibrant life force within us, however you understand it, that life force has to spend time on that meditation pillow, right? That cushion, that place that grounds us, that place that gives us a sense of presence in the world. So that's number one, the inner breath. And then a pair of binoculars today, and this is the only thing I could find around the house, to kind of capture this sense that how do we begin this journey together, the hero's journey? A journey that is not designed to be another project or to accomplish something, but a journey that's an invitation to a new vision of who you might be. It's really an invitation to open space. It's not solution based. It's not project based. It's like adventure based. And so today I want to put together that image for you and try to wrap that up today. How do we collectively find our centering place enough so that the window opens for you and I individually and then hopefully collectively to look out into a new horizon? So that's what we're going to play around with today. I'm glad you're here. It's so nice to see so many of you starting to get on board today. I want to say that, just simply getting ready for Sunday morning and hanging out with y'all, while each of us are doing this individually, there is something like deeply palpable knowing that we're doing this together at the same time. So that the insights that we share together today are not solely intended for you, whoever you are, staring at your computer monitor, but it's intended to nurture the whole, right? The whole of us. And today, when we end, I'm gonna I don't know that I'll sing it, but there's an old folk song that kind of reminds us of what we're up to today. That while we approach it individually, ultimately we seek some collective good by spending this time together. So I'm glad you're here. To begin with today, I'm going to have a reading that I think can kind of help capture this theme for today. This is a reading by the Dalai Lama. And as I read this, I'm going to light the candle to kind of get you centered. I want you to kind of pause for a moment and just take a couple of deep cleansing breaths, kind of center your body down again. And then if you can remember kind of where you arrived from last week, or maybe just if you're new to this morning, kind of think about the places or the experiences that on Mother's Day kind of feel like a warm motherly embrace for your soul or your inner self. For me, last week I shared it's when I gathered together with a small group of intimate people and trying just to be real together. Those moments nurture my soul in a pretty powerful way. And so today I'm going to invite you to kind of move in your imagination to that space, to that experience. Let it kind of sink into you as I light the candle and do the reading. And as you move into that space and I read today, just kind of honor how important it is for you to have those places in your life. And maybe this is one of those places where you simply pause and you allow the fullness of whoever you are to gather momentum again. So today I light the candle on the meditation cushion to draw you to that place as well. Here's what the Dalai Lama says, some words of wisdom for all of us today. Although attempting to bring about world peace through the internal transformation of the individual is a difficult task, it is the only way. Peace must first be developed within the individual. And I believe that love and compassion and altruism, they are the fundamental basis for this kind of peace. So that once these qualities are developed within an individual, he or she is then able to create an atmosphere of peace and harmony. I love that line. Once these qualities are developed within the individual, then they are able to create an atmosphere of peace and of harmony. This atmosphere can be expanded and extended then to the individual, to their family, then from family into community, and eventually into the whole world. The connection between the personal inner peace and peace on earth is the beautiful connection that we all long for. Don't you love that idea that somehow your journey into your own sense of wholeness and peace is actually the pathway to the global peace that we all long for? That to me is the kind of the mystery that, in a sense, religions have sought, people of indigenous communities and spiritual practices have sought, and that in some ways we all seek. So today, I want you to just pause and honor for a moment that this time that we share together, this 35 minutes of inner attentiveness, is the important journey we all need to take before we open up the window, grab our binoculars, and seek some greater shores, some greater vision for our collective life. As you pause and sit in that space for yourself for a moment, I'm going to teach you just the easiest yoga exercise there is. I think it was Thich Nhat Hanh who called it the facial yoga. And that is simply to put on your face a warm and soft smile. And when you do that, your face begins to soften, your heart begins to lift. And so just take a moment of quiet. Find yourself in that space that holds rejuvenation for you. And as I too will close my eyes, just spend a minute there, and then let a smile come on your face for just a moment. See if it invites you into a deeper experience of that. To close, I'll ring the bell before we get started on our reflection for today. So welcome. Glad you're here. There is something beautiful about that soft smile. I don't know what you experienced, but there's something calming about just simply smiling and connecting that smile to that which is meaningful for you, like the place that brings you peace, just simply honors it today. Today I want to spend some time just wrapping up this idea of what helps us launch into kind of the journey part of the hero's journey. We've already talked about how to make sure that you have this balancing act, this breathing in and this capacity to breathe out. So giving yourself time for the inner work is totally required and something we all need to be doing, particularly at this time. But I will tell you that no matter where you look, this idea of an invitation to look beyond self, to look into new frontier is prevalent. It's ubiquitous. You can look at cultures who, you think about cultures that raise their children up and nurture their children in the village to the point where they know the child must begin their own vision quest. And so, in those traditions, in those cultures, they send their children off to find themselves, to seek a new vision of who they can be, and sometimes even to find a new name for themselves, and then to return back to the community with a strong vision of who they really are and who they are in the world. That's the kind of pattern, the nurturing of the individual, and then the allowing of that individual to kind of go out and imagine or see a new future for themselves or a new way forward for themselves. You see it as well in spiritual practices and communities around the world. I remember years ago I was into meditation, and I spent a week in a silent meditation center in Burlingame, and it was a monastery, I think, and I was there for a week. But it was that same pattern, right? These religions have had this practice of drawing in and then casting out, drawing in and then moving yourself into new frontier, having this sense of confidence that it takes to have some inner orientation enough to be able to dare to reimagine yourself in the world. That pattern is everywhere. I've seen it in our congregation. As a pastor of a congregation, I've seen members of that congregation kind of explore their own inner journey enough and then begin to seek new frontier and then to act on that in powerful and meaningful ways over and over again. I've seen it with my own parents who grew up in a religious tradition that they nurtured through practices and commitment to community. And that pattern of religious practice inspired them to change their career path and begin to work for the common good, to seek out ways to be helpful to other people. It changed their life trajectory because they did the inner work and the visioning work or the journey work that opened them up to new frontier. That's the magic, the power of the hero's journey. It's not like we have to just simply adapt to circumstances, but we can adopt a different kind of vision for ourselves if we're willing to give ourselves to that journey. And that's why I think it's such an important thing to do. Lori and I last night, we watched on Netflix a documentary called Crip Camp. And it's the story of those who struggled to implement the American Disabilities Act. And it's quite a powerful documentary. You can see this same pattern in that documentary. As people who struggle with disabilities discover their inner selves, their inner voice, gain confidence, look to a different kind of future, and then begin to work for that future. It is a powerful and moving testimony of how this pattern works. And I think that's what's so important for us to remember, that this is nothing new. It could be the very fabric of what it means to be spiritual, or to be holy, or to be connected to the kind of life force that is part of what evolution and cultural evolution and spiritual evolution is all about, right? We don't just land somewhere. We land somewhere so that we can gaze out into new frontier. In some ways, I think, if I'm to be honest, this pattern is the foundation for what I think is probably the most powerful kind of religious experience. That religion never really was supposed to be about mastering a dogmatic position or memorizing some sort of spiritual language, and then being able to, um, kind of speak that language. That's not what the vibrancy of religion was all about. Religion is about a commitment to this trust that no matter where we find ourselves in any culture, time, or place, holy or sacred is present for us. And if we journey inside to discover that, it simply opens up a window to see that on the outside. And like Carl Jung says, then we begin this journey towards wholeness, towards a wider embrace of self and world. And that ultimately is the religious journey. And that's the one I think that you and I are invited to experience and explore together in this time in particular. Why is it so important for us to do this kind of thing? Well, I think this is a tough one. I think it's important, given our global pandemic that we're in, that we kind of gain some capacity, not simply to pride ourselves in being functional, like we can interact with the world in a meaningful way, but rather to pride ourselves now on being visionary. Not to simply pride ourselves on being functional, which we've all been able to do, but to begin to pride ourselves in our capacity to be visionary, to see beyond what has held us as people, communities, culture, into new ways of being together, to see myself placed in world in ways I hadn't imagined before. This opportunity we've been given through a global pandemic of seeing ourselves connected literally in one breath with an entire planet, that we're all struggling with this together, is kind of a wake-up call that reminds us of that intimacy of interconnectedness around the globe. And I'm feeling it with the experience, albeit a negative one, of responding to the pandemic. But I know that this experience can translate over to when I have some space in my life to begin to re-engage things like environmental issues or economic justice issues, or how I view my neighbor in a new way. I mean, all of the things that we're learning in this time together can begin to foster the capacity to grab a pair of binoculars and look out the window and see a new future. That's what's so exciting about it. There's a woman who I love, and her name escapes me, which happens when you get old like me. But she's been working in this arena for a long time, and I went to go hear her speak once, and I thought she was talking about the environment and how it's all fallen apart, and I thought she was mostly going to go, oh my God, this is all coming apart at the seams, and she was going to be depressed. But rather, she said, this moment is one of the most exciting times to be living into. That she was excited about these times because it's moving people into this capacity, almost a required capacity, to look to a new kind of future. This pattern of time on the cushion and time with your binoculars is the pattern we all need to learn how to master in this time and place, given our circumstances. So, my last little bit of reflection here is, how do you then move off of the cushion and start your journey? How do you move off the cushion and start the journey? And I think there's kind of two angles I want to just explore with you for a moment. The first one is there's some motivation that's, I think, open to us when we pay attention to our own kind of intuition. What is the sort of inner call or inner voice or inner drive that you notice when you're, in that space that nurtures you? What stirs inside of you that sometimes can be the motivational factor you need to then move from the cushion and look into new frontier. I'll give you an example. For me personally, as a clergy person, I work to manage congregational life. But while I was doing that, and while I was spending time on my cushion, I was realizing that more and more people are fostering their sense of spirituality or their connection to the sacred um, in ways outside of the institutional church or institutional religion at all. That people were experiencing the sacred in their embrace or the experience of the natural world, and that they were seeking some ways to be deeply spiritual in relationship to the natural world. I knew that was happening. I could feel it myself. And so I began to explore that. I didn't know where I was going to go, but it was something inside of me that was telling me, look, something's going on here. That the sacred seems to be expanding outside of the walls of kind of institutional congregational life, and it's saturated everywhere in the air we breathe and the water we drink and in the natural world and our place in the cosmos. And so I began to put on the binoculars and to see what was out there. And that's the beauty of the journey. It's not like you've got something figured out that you're going to go implement. It's an invitation into unknown that you trust will hold some truth or some wisdom for you. And you go with confidence, knowing, like in the song that Martin's going to play for you after this is over, that the sacred will go with you into that space, is probably already in that space moving, and you're but seeing it for the first time. So that's one way to get off the cushion is, and I don't know what that is for you, but simply to find where's that kind of inner voice, that gnawing, that in old religious language, you used to call it, are you called? Is something calling you forward? Is it a siren song? What is it that's going on? And then follow that off your cushion into some vision of the future. The second one is the one that seems more prevalent now. And that's the one that I used Randy Verardi, who is a PhD in the philosophy of religion, and my interview with Randy. And Randy talks about kind of how kind of frames of reference that we hold to interpret our experience of life. So these frameworks that we construct kind of hold the way in which we interpret how life is going, right? So economic frameworks, religious frameworks, models about human sexuality, you name it. We create these things to kind of hold us together so we kind of know what we're doing. And Randy, in that YouTube video that I posted, frankly, I talk too much at the front end, so sorry about that. But if you explore that video, he talks about this kind of concept of there are points in history or in our life when those frames can't hold our reality anymore. They strain at the edges and begin to show cracks. And as they strain, we're required not to continue to adapt to that framework, but to adopt new frames. If there's one thing we've learned through this experience of sheltering in place and the realities of a coronavirus that continues to threaten human life, is that we've seen some of the frames that we've taken for granted breaking down. One in particular that is so upsetting to me is the way in which people of color have had to absorb the weight of this pandemic. And the indicators of systemic racism and abuse and ignorance and ignoring of communities that's been going on and on and on to the point where they're the ones who become, if you will, they're first affected by this because they just don't have the infrastructure, the capacity to absorb it like other folks do. And that's unnerving to me. What have we created together that can't isn't responding well to this situation, right? The frame begins to break down. And so one way to get off the cushion is to notice what frames or paradigms are no longer able to hold meaning for you. Sometimes those are religious frames. Sometimes those are cultural frames. But they're obviously an invitation to open the window and to begin a journey into some new frontier. That's what I wanted you to spend some time thinking about today. Is this dual pattern of how do you let your vibrant life force, spirit, soul, essence, how do you let it have time on the cushion? Only you know the answer to that. And once there for a bit, how do you gain the motivation, whether it be an internal motivation or some sort of external breaking down of the frameworks that held your beautiful and meaningful life, that are kind of coming apart at the seams, that are an invitation to pick up the binoculars and look into a new future. To me, that is the invitation of life itself, right? Or if you're a religious person, that is God's calling to humanity. God did not just manifest God's self 2,000 years ago or in some religious tradition. God just is, right? It's isness. It's existential invitation into this gift of life. That's the pattern that we need to seek right now to be able to move forward into the future. So that's my invitation to you. And my hope is that the combination of the lecture that's on YouTube, this little 2-part series, and maybe your own thoughtful reflections can guide you into that new frontier. All right, amen to that. All right, so thanks for spending time with me today. To be honest with you, for me to be able to think about these things for a week and how I might craft it, spend time with you, it's been an amazing gift to me. It's helping me take this more seriously, helping me spend a bit more time on my own cushion and pick up my binoculars and look out a little bit in the future about what adventure do I want to go on. And will that adventure help change the world? As the first reading said, that's the only way the world changes. For me to take that adventure and then to do it in solidarity with you. So one of the traditions that we have here on this little Facebook stream is to kind of share with one another. And today, as we honor the mothering amongst us and all who have mothered us into life, whether it be your biological mother or the people who have lived for you like mother, to honor them today. So we want to make sure we do that. But just an invitation to you to continue to shout out to one another and say good morning and connect to each other, wish each other a happy Mother's Day, sort of create a cyber embrace that connects us all. And then I'll transition into a closing for today. So delightful to have you with us today. I'm going to close today by, I'm not going to sing this song, but this last week I heard this great old spiritual, and it goes a little bit like this. It says, children, go where I send thee. How will I send thee? I'm going to send thee one by one like the little baby Jesus born in Bethlehem. I'm going to send thee 2 by 2, 2 like Paul and Silas, and then 3 by 3 and 4 by 4 and 5 by 5, all the way up to 10 by 10, the song goes. Where will I send thee? How will I send thee? I'm going to send thee one by one. That's the song. You can look it up. It's an awesome one. But what I love about that song is it's a reflection of what we've talked about today. This idea that that God, in a sense, or the sacred, or whatever, sends us all into the world one by one. Each one of us, just like the Christ child born in a manger, are birthed into the world to begin this grand adventure. We're all called individually to do this. You're called, I'm called, everybody I meet on the street is called, everybody around the planet. We're all called one by one, but it doesn't stop there. Because as each of us begins this journey, we realize that there's more and more of us that are attempting this together. 2 by 2, 3 by 3, 4 by 4, 5 by 5, 6 by 6, 7 by 7, 10 by 10, or whatever the county will allow us to congregate in numbers by, we can do this together. Your individual journey matters. It matters to us all. So my challenge to you in the week ahead is to just experiment with the cushion and the binoculars. All right? Just find yourself some cushion time and then look to the future. I don't know where it's going to take you. Neither do you. That is the hero's journey. Because when you return home, you'll probably be a little bit different. You'll see with new eyes. And maybe you'll find a little wholeness for yourself and the world in which we share. Thanks for being a part of today, everybody. I'm glad that you're with us. I keep saying that, but I am glad that you're here. Okay, a couple of announcements to finish up our day. Thanks for hanging in there today. Just one note, since this is going to go on for a little while, we don't really know when we're going to be able to get back into kind of collective life together. And so if this is going to go on for a while, I do notice that there's a number of you who are just logging in who are not part of our church community, Our Savior's Lutheran Church community. And if you're interested in getting a little announcement about what's coming up, the links and all that kind of stuff, feel free to just send me your email either in the comments section on the live stream, or you can go to just do dan@oslc.net and send me your email address. I won't put you on our church roster, but what I'll do is add you to a constant contact list that will send you out a notification of these events that come up once a week and when we do them. And I've got a couple special ones coming up too, end of May, early June, to kind of help us kind of bring an end to the shelter-in-place experience that we're all having. So if you're interested in that, just send me an email and I'll build a separate list to connect you to this as well. Also, for those of you who are part of the church community, this is Stewardship Sunday, so a chance for you to let us know what you're thinking about as far as donations for next year. It's even more important because a lot of us have taken a financial hit to kind of maybe sit down for a minute and reassess that. Are you in a place where you can do more? Or are you in a place where you're going to have to pull back? We need to know that so that we can construct a budget for next year. You can do that. Literally, Lori and I did it last night by going on the website and clicking on the banner and just doing it online. It's a really easy way to do it. So let's get it all taken care of today. If you're connected to this, let's make that happen. Also, a shout out, our confirmation students. We're supposed to have Confirmation Sunday next Sunday, the 17th. We're not able to do that. And so just a warm heart to all the kids who spent 3 years in confirmation. They were going to have their confirmation service next Sunday, and we're not able to do that. We're trying to look for alternatives, but, it's just an awkward and sad situation. So a big heart to all of our confirmation students who are reaching the end of 3 years of spending time in their own little cushion, and we're sending them off to seek a new vision of how they'll be spiritual in the world. So good stuff. And then finally, 2 other things. This week, Thursday, is our executive committee will meet at 7 o'clock, a Zoom meeting. So exec, you're on for that. And finally, we've been building a partnership with a group called Project Peace. And they developed projects to go out and do social justice in the community a couple times a year and support it with background information about the kind of the social issues that we're addressing by doing that. Project Peace has been trying to figure out how to do all this during the pandemic and put out a great piece about things that you and your household can do to kind of continue to reach out beyond self to serve others. And that will be sent out this Thursday as part of our e-blast to all of you as well. So pay attention to that. A good organization. All right. All right. With that, thanks for being a community together. It's great to hang out in the living room. Hopefully the little visual that we created helps you think about this whole hero's journey thing in a meaningful way. Hopefully my shirt does too. I wore my butterfly shirt. Kind of reminder about how we can move from cocoon to getting some wings and exploring new frontier. So I invite you to do that. And know that not only does my heart go with you as you continue this journey, the Sacred Heart holds you as well. So peace for the week and the journey ahead.